Hi, I'm DMA Anderson. We are back for take 2 of project management with Google Workspace and Gemini. And this is with the Google Workspace Hangout and Community Chat. I'm here to help offer you a framework for project management so that you can try Google Gemini across some of your favorite Google Workspace apps, but using it in pursuit of an actual structured way to get your projects set up, executed, and completed. If you are like many people right now, despite multiple tools for project management, your default mode might be, well, let's take a look at your browser. How many tabs are open right now in each of your browser windows? Now let's add how many emails are in your inboxes, unarchived or unread. And then we're going to add all of those bookmark links and various bookmark management applications. And the thousands of items that sometimes adds up to for people really reflects that our default project management approach is leave everything open. I don't close it till I'm done with it, but as those items tick up and up and up, it becomes overwhelming. It becomes impossible to work through. And of course, it really takes a toll on the way that your computer is going to perform. So today, we're going to take a look at a really simple framework for project management so that when you're experimenting with Gemini and Google Workspace and some of your favorite apps, you'll have an approach to say, can I do everything I need to do? Or what can I do with this tool? So let's begin. I'm not going to use a PowerPoint or a slide presentation for today because most of this is live demo. Instead, we're just going to start with a very simple approach to project management. And there's a lot of wonderful work out there. I've added a couple of links I'll share with you. But I like to keep things simple. So first, we're going to walk through the 5 core principles of project management. Number 1, to begin any project, establish measurable outcomes. A lot of times people want to start in the middle. What's the process we're going to use? Or what's the technology we should use? What you really want to do is establish and have everyone agree on, where are we trying to go with this project? What does the win look like? And in order to measure that, we also then will need to capture baseline. Where are we starting right now in this space so we can see if the project moved the needle for us? Number 2, engage all stakeholders. Especially if you are a company of one, you're used to running projects based on how you think you want them to go. Even in that scenario, there's 2 other important folks that you want to involve in your decision making as you execute the project. Number 1, who has the authority to say yes and no, and who is funding the project. So you always want to make sure that they are part of the execution of the project. Don't let them wait until you've finished. Make sure you've baked in ways for them to engage throughout execution. Second is who's the target audience for this particular project. Don't let them be the passive recipients of another team's hard work. Make sure you've created ways for them to stay engaged, because that will create a real sense of ownership and investment when the project is completed in continuing the outcome of the work. And finally, whether it's you, a team, a steering committee, whoever it is who has to execute the project, make sure they're involved in that early decision making as well. Next, you want to evaluate and adapt throughout execution. In all of my work in project management, one of the toughest mindsets to shift is that the way to execute against a strategy is to stick to the original plan. If you've ever worked in the that's how we've always done things space, you know how difficult that can be to somehow magically produce different outcomes. So if you are running a project, your goal is to make sure you're creating processes and values that let you evaluate how things are going and adapt based on how things are going throughout execution of the project. Next is deliver measurable value. At some point in time, when you are working on a project, especially a recurring annual project, the process becomes the outcome. We completed, the gala. We had the conference again this year. We had more applications this year than last. And that is really about measuring the process of whatever that gala or that conference or those applications were designed to actually influence or change or produce an outcome for. So make sure you're delivering measurable value from the project and that the project does not itself, upon completion, become the outcome. And finally, we want you to foster replicability, because whether the project is really steady from beginning to end and the outcome that you're seeking to attain, or it grows and shifts and evolves and ultimately lands in new and exciting and educational spaces, you want to make sure that there are ways for you to take all you've done and all you've learned and do it again the next time. So those are our 5 core principles of project management. Next, when we're ready to put project management onto its feet, there are 3 core practices that I love and I stick to. The first is you've got to brain dump. Get everything out of your head and make sure there's a space and a process for every other stakeholder in execution to get things out of their head as well. If information is living inside of even one participant's head, they can't get sick, they can't go on vacation, they can't forget, because it can disrupt the rest of the project. So if you do nothing else in a great project management execution, you're committing that you are constantly getting everything out of your head. Number 2 is to centralize. You want to save and manage everything via a single source of truth. That means all of the tabs, and then things are happening in the chat thread or the text thread. Oh, I emailed that to you. Oh, I'm going to send this over on a calendar, or I'm just going to take notes right now and I'll transfer them. I once, many, many years ago, had an amazing colleague who taught me back in the days of paper that no paper should ever pass one's fingertips twice. And I took that with me into the digital world. I opened emails once, and then I process them. I look at a tab in the information I need to act on once, and then I clip and process it. So same thing for you. We want to make sure that whatever tools that we're using allow us to create a single source of truth for all the different aspects of managing the project. And then finally, practice number 3, every single day, at minimum, you've got to review and prioritize that single source of truth. You, at minimum, have to go through and make sure that what you're planning to do today is still on track based on what you did before and everything you've learned from that. And in tech, we are going to do a morning stand-up. Certainly in modern analog corporations that I've worked at, there's at least a weekly stand-up. You just want to make sure that both your practices and your platform allow you to easily review and prioritize. And with that, let's take a look at some of the Google Workspace apps that integrate with Gemini and see how we can apply these principles and practices in each of those spaces. We're going to start with Google Docs in Gemini because every place that I work with, the default document for project management is going to be a Google Doc or a Word doc. That's where people naturally want to start. And so we're going to use a sample chat prompt that I have crafted, just explaining that I'm a Google Workspace admin. I've been tasked with creating an AI FAQs library for the team so that they'll know the policy and tools that are okay to use. And the goal is to reduce AI-related emails for support by 30% over the next quarter. So I'm going to ask AI to ask as my technical project manager and put this together for me. And I am going to use the same prompt for every tool on the board. So let's start with Google Docs. So I've created first just a sample AI acceptable use policy because we're going to want to reference that as we are giving our prompts to Gemini. So I'm going to create a new Google Doc. And the first thing that I'll see is this wonderful help me write. And so I could come in and paste the prompt here, but you'll see there's nowhere for me to upload. And if I'm trying to use a smart chip with that @ sign, it's not popping up my files. So in this instance, I'm going to not use help me write, which I love. And you can always bring back by going to your building blocks and choosing some of the building blocks that you want to use. Instead, we're going to go to the Gemini sidebar, and that's more robust. So then I can put my chat prompt in here, and then I'm going to add a source from the drive, and of course, I'm going to drop in that AI acceptable use policy. So now I've given it a nice prompt, and don't be too skimpy on the prompts. Don't give it too much latitude. You don't want to over-engineer. You don't want to make it so specific that it basically regurgitates what you wrote. So I am now going to submit, and we're going to stand by to see what Gemini and Docs comes back with for our project management. All right, so I am seeing this introduction, a really nice table here for a charter, explaining the scope, what's in scope for the project, and equally important, what you will not do, what is out of scope for the project. It's giving me a timeline and then giving me draft FAQs. So this is fantastic. And I'm just going to select insert, and I will have my first project. And then from here, I like to go ahead and add that outline level. So I'm going to make each of these sections heading 1, just so I can get through on the left side and see what I'm dealing with. So we have out of scope, and we have draft FAQs. Wonderful. And in this case, I'm also, normally I want to have tasks. I want to know, who's responsible for what. So I can return to Gemini here, and I can say, please draft an initial task list, list with stakeholders. So I could keep building. That context is going to stay with me. It's going to put that together, and wherever I drop the mouse, I'm going to be able to insert my initial task list with stakeholders. So that looks great, and I'm going to insert that. And once again, I am going to make this, oh, it was already a heading 1 for me. All right, so now I can jump through my project really easily, and I can get going. Now, as you're seeing, if I go back to my principles, I'm able to establish the measurable outcome right here in that project charter. It's telling me this is what we're going after, that 30% reduction. And then in terms of engaging all the stakeholders, I can come to my project task list, and my stakeholders responsible, I can do that @ symbol and then go ahead and assign right out of my contacts list. So that's a nice cheat. In addition to adding files, I can add my contacts as well. And then in terms of evaluating and adopting throughout creation, this is where things get a bit unwieldy. So for instance, if I wanted to add more tasks, I can keep inserting rows in this table. If I want to reorganize them, I can drag the rows around. I can come in and brain dump to my heart's content. It is a limitless document, but at some point, as you can see, it's going to get a bit unwieldy. So this is our entry-level use of Gemini with Docs, and you can see I have my table here, and I can put our sample questions and answers. I could add a column to assign team members here. And one additional thing I can do in Google Docs, as well as in some of the other apps, I can create a custom gem to do a little of the work alongside the team. So in this instance, as people are drafting these sample FAQs, I may want to review them against that AI policy, even though it was drafted with the AI policy in mind. So that is a great use of a gem. So I'm going to go into the main Google Gemini app, and you'll see that there are gems that let me create very easily specific tiny task bots for myself. So I'm going to create a new gem, and I'm going to call it my AI FAQ reviewer. And it is going to evaluate our draft FAQs against the acceptable use policy. And so I'm going to say, please review each of the FAQs in our working document to ensure we are complying with the organization's acceptable use policy. And that's enough of a prompt to make it incredibly clear. So I'm going to save my AI FAQ reviewer. It's been created, and I could start a chat here, but remember, I really want to centralize everything. So this is where those gems shine. I'm going to come back. I'm going to go ahead and refresh this. And then we're going to go back to our Gemini sidebar and then open the sandwich menu. And there's my AI FAQ reviewer. So I'm going to click that. And then I'm going to say, please review the draft AI FAQs we've completed so far. And it's going to be able to reference the draft AI FAQs, and it's coming back with some feedback. They're strongly compliant, and this might be something that we want to incorporate into a cadence, into that daily stand-up, or at minimum into a weekly compliance or sanitization pass. So I'm going to just come down here and add another giant block of information into my document. And that is an example of how we might use Google Docs with Gemini for project management. You're seeing, in terms of fostering replicability, I do have a pretty giant document, and I could, turn it on to make it copyable. And obviously can come in and add anything to my heart's content. I can centralize everything. I could prioritize, but really, why? Let's move into a slightly more powerful tool that's less overwhelming. And that, of course, is going to be using Google Sheets with Gemini. So I'm going to grab our prompt again. And this time, we're going to create a Google Sheet. So for everyone who works on technical teams, or even mildly advanced teams, this is really kind of the default project manager when you move into more technical spaces. And so I am going to come in to Gemini again. And remember, we're going to use the same prompt in each of the tools. And I'm going to upload. I'm not going to upload. I'm going to go ahead and use Smart Chips, and I'm going to add my acceptable use policy. So I'm just hitting that @ symbol, and it's going to pop up my contacts. It's going to pop up emails. It's going to pop up files. And so I'm giving it the same prompt in the same file. So let's see how it translates this into a project management opportunity when we're using Excel with Gemini. So it's come back with a fairly light table. I'm going to go ahead and insert that table and close that. So you're seeing here that it's giving me different elements of the charter and then a description of the charter, but it's not really giving me things I can easily drop into a Google Sheet. So it's treating it pretty much like it's working in a document, and this is not going to be delightful to put into a Google Sheet. So if I come here, I'll open a new tab. Even if I come in and insert this, it's just dropping in those tables for me, and this is just not delightful. So I want to come back and show you an earlier result that I got from the same prompt because it was more thorough. I definitely preferred that prompt. So let's go ahead and open that. So here you're seeing something much more defined. I can come in with my smart chips, do assignees. I have a checklist. It's giving me groupings for the phase of the project. I even can come in, it offered this nice gradient color coding for the status of each of the activities. And then with the secondary prompt, I could come in and say, okay, give me those draft FAQs. This is a much more manageable way to deal with this type of project management. And for us, this is probably more useful because most of us are going to be a little more comfortable working in sheets. But as you can imagine, in terms of the longer text-based lists of items and evaluations, it sometimes is going to give me just a dump of text, and that's not delightful. So I want to go ahead and let's go ahead and just copy this. And I'm going to move this back into the less inspiring version that we got the second time. So now I've got this nice table, and I want to go back into our best practices because just like with docs, I can use Gemini to build the plan. I can engage my stakeholders with smart chips and of course comments as we've always done. Now for evaluating and adapting throughout execution, I'm going to come back to this tab. Let me close this one. And I am going to do something that I love doing in Gemini for Sheets, and that is I'm going to create a visualization. So for those of you who, for your customers or your colleagues, are building out little dashboards based on data to help them more easily get through meetings or get through reviews, I can come in and say, prepare a dashboard showing the progress of each of the, let's say, categories of FAQs. And instead of all of the work you might be doing, might be used to doing, of trying to build out charts and graphs or run at least with the initial versions that now Google Sheets will suggest for you, you can query and requery and get it to create a very instant progress chart. So I'm going to go ahead and that would let me start building a dash for my users. And it's even giving me, I'm seeing here this kind of nice, let's close that, you can see it. So it's even giving me a completion table that I could put side by side with an instant phase level category of where we are in project. So imagine you could just keep doing prompt engineering and delivering what you think would be delightful for your client. So for Google Sheets, you're seeing that the upside is it's giving us filterable tables. I can just as easily brain dump inside of Google Sheets. It's just not the place that I want to be able to put longer content or other things that aren't tabular data. And so, yes, I could put my long, unformatted thoughts and notes in here, but just like with Google Docs, why? So in terms of centralizing, you might want to build out a repository of critical documents and stakeholders and use smart chips to do so that people have a quick reference, and it could be a tab with a library. And jumping through a series of tabs in a workbook is still more efficient than jumping through a bunch of different tabs, having this open across a variety of documents and applications. In terms of making it replicable, just like with a Google Doc, you could turn it into a template so it could be copied again, and you don't need to use AI to do that. It might be less unwieldy than a Google Doc, and it's got that wonderful dashboard integration with Gemini, and that is absolutely the #1 way I use Gemini in spreadsheets. So those are our doc-based Google Workspace plus Gemini integrations for project management. And obviously there's much more you could do, but I'm using this framework to give everyone a starting point to test against when you are exploring with Gemini. Now we're going to move to the other side of the suite, and we're going to take a look at the actual AI applications and how you might do project management there. And we're going to start there with the Gemini app itself. So there's been a lot of investment at Google in making the Gemini app a central place for project management. And it works beautifully in one way, and it is a bit contributing to the tab tax in another way. So let's go ahead and start with, we're going to put this project together and we're going to establish a measurable outcome. You absolutely cannot beat Gemini for being able to come in. I'm going to go ahead, paste that in, and then I can come in and then add those files, which we love to do. So I'm going to come back in, add that AI acceptable use policy, and I could do fast, I could do more advanced responses, but this is a very basic prompt. So we're going to go ahead and just do the basic prompt at the fast version of Gemini. And already you're seeing this incredibly quick response. And you're also seeing at each element of the response, right? Here's my scope and deliverables. Here's my draft FAQs. I could do the same thing here. This is obviously similar to the response we got in Docs and in Sheets. It's also here showing me sources, and I can continue to refine in here. So I can say, list the stakeholders I should approach to engage in this work at a typical corporation, right? So I can keep asking questions and building this out as a really unparalleled source of information for the project. So it's telling me to make sure, obviously, I have my IT team, security and compliance. They're the number one because you're going to need that AI policy from them, and or in conjunction with legal. And then HR, data privacy officer, the departmental AI champions. What I love about queries like this is it will sometimes speak up folks that you may not have thought of. And in this instance, I'm going to make another great use of the Gemini app, because the Gemini app, in the vision that they're presenting for Gemini for project management, is that I am controlling all of my inputs and outputs and information here, and then I'm passing them out to whatever tool in the Workspace suite is the appropriate tool for the work I need to get done for the project. So for instance, I could come here and say, draft an introductory email for this project to our departmental AI champions in marketing. And just like that, not only is it going to draft the sample email, but because it is beautifully integrated across Google Workspace, I will be able to go to my context menu and say, great, draft it in Gmail. So this becomes the source of truth, and then I'm going to open Gmail to take action. And that's where you're seeing, this is the subject. I would love to see that subject up here in the subject line. But apart from that, you're seeing that in a click, I can fairly quickly push the email out to my marketing team. And of course, I will have the actual email in the source of truth, so others might be able to reference and use it again. Or I can keep prompt engineering to modify it. So we love Gemini for being able to connect us and spin us out to the tools that we need to complete the project. But I cannot turn this into task management and prioritization, which is at the heart of project execution. I could take any one of these that they're preparing for me, and I could export it to Sheets and run with it. But at this point, I have Gmails happening in Gmail, my actions happening over in Sheets, my actual charter, which I would probably put into a Google Doc, though that's not an option here. I would copy and put that into a document, but you're starting to see tab creep happen again. So when we're looking at those core principles and practices, I can get all of the information into Gemini and I can push so much of it in actions out of Gemini, but that core centralization. So there's a single source of truth for all of my stakeholders, my assets, and my actions. It just cannot be done there. So we love Gemini app. There's wonderful uses for it. But in this instance, I want to move on to the last Google Workspace tool that I love, and I imagine many of you are already using, and that is NotebookLM Plus. So you have many of the benefits of Gemini, the app itself, baked into NotebookLM Plus, and then it takes it to this extraordinary new level. So we're going to take a look at NotebookLM Plus, and I'm going to, I built out an original notebook for this, but we're going to create a new notebook. And then I'm going to paste my prompt, same prompt in here. And in this instance, I also, again, want to attach the Drive file. I'm going to filter down to text documents just for speed. That's probably the fastest way to do it. So already it's not the most delightful way to get started. But what's great here is first, it's taking a very quick look at what I've ingested, but I can come in and continue to ingest more items. Now with NotebookLM Plus, I can add links. I can reference other documents. I can upload PDFs. I'm going to close these really fast. So I can continue to add sources throughout the life cycle of this project. And that is just incredible. So I'm just going to use web links now for all of these files and videos. Hold it. There we go. That's a good start. So I'm going to insert these to add some more context, and then I'm going to bring the same prompt in. So I've expanded the universe of what I can reference while I am building out my project management plan. Then I'm going to come right back in and I can put my prompt in and go ahead and submit. And it's going to search through everything that I've attached, and it's going to come out with a really robust project plan with footnoted references, just extraordinary. So the first thing that you're going to see in NotebookLM Plus is how really robust these answers are. And while they may be text answers, they're still incredibly useful, just like with Gemini, if you're planning to use the notebook itself as the source of truth for the team. And so the first thing you'll see is it's going to come in here and tell you which document is informing each of the items that it's synthesizing into its response. So one tip I want to give you is you obviously want to share this notebook with all of the stakeholders on the team. This is an organizational Google Workspace account, so I can only share this notebook with other users in my organization. If you want to create a notebook because you're working with freelancers or gig contractors, if you need a link that you can invite people from outside of the organization or even make publicly available, you do have to use a personal Gmail account for that. But if in this instance, we are creating AI FAQs in a library for an internal organization, so this works great. And I have hundreds of sources that I can add here as opposed to dozens in the personal version of NotebookLM. So here we have all of this wonderful response. And second tip, no one else is seeing the chats that you are creating when they're logging in. So if you want people to be able to reference useful responses as you're using the tool, you do want to save that to a note, and that moves it over into Studio, where anyone using the notebook who accesses the notebook would have the option to use it. if it's view it. And if it's a particularly useful output that you might want to reference, you can even convert that to a source, and then everyone else who is using your NotebookLM Plus for this project would have this particular output as one of the references that Notebook can be taking a look at as it's designing answers. So NotebookLM Plus, very powerful in terms of being able to ingest a much broader range of reference materials and then output synthesized responses that have those footnotes. And when you're doing this type of work, you know that your legal team and your data privacy and compliance team members are going to be incredibly happy to see what the basis of any of the FAQs that you might be drafting are coming from. Now, this is the real power of NotebookLM Plus. So remember, as we're looking, yes, you're going to have a text version of the charter that has the outcome. You're going to be able to invite stakeholders from inside of your company. You will not be able to execute tasks cleanly inside of NotebookLM Plus. Everyone can work together. It's beautifully centralized, but it's not a powerful project management platform because it's really there to ingest, synthesize, and output really awesome responses to your queries. Deliver measurable value. This is where NotebookLM Plus really shines. So let's take a look, because we just looked at these text outputs, but the other things that NotebookLM Plus can do include creating a literal podcast with two synthetic podcasters having an incredible 20-minute conversation about your project. And so as people want to learn about the policy, your users, your library and FAQ reference users can come in and listen and interact with an audio discussion that will help them to understand the information. It can be turned into a slide deck, a video overview. This is relatively new. Mind map it. You can make flashcards. It is such an extraordinary tool in terms of delivering something really, really usable and user-friendly. So create a quiz from our sample FAQs. And before I do that, let me make sure I put the sample FAQs. I did. Okay, into here. So let's create a quiz from our sample FAQs. So this is where you have something so powerful and so unusual. So NotebookLM Plus, wherever you're going to do the work, you might consider having the final product in NotebookLM Plus because it is so powerful. So I will let you know when that quiz is ready at the end. So we've taken a look now at Google Docs, Sheets, Gemini, and NotebookLM Plus, and how each of them integrate in some ways with Gemini so that we can really manage our project using the 5 core principles and 3 core practices of project management. One of the questions that came up in the live call was, where does agentic AI figure into this? And there's nothing more powerful right now in Google Workspace's AI integrations than the ability to have agents do much of this work for you independently, sequentially. I'm not a fan yet of autonomous agentic AI because I don't believe we want to trust the AI bots to do for us without human interference. So as my wonderful co-founder, Stefan would say, we're just looking for that human touch point so that it's not an autonomous sequence, but it can be an infinitely faster chain of events by letting the different tools operate in sequence or in connection with each other. That's its own conversation. Maybe Stefan will come back for that. All right, we have the Gen AI quiz, and that's how quickly you could create a quiz. And that is just one of the many examples. I'm so excited about all the things that NotebookLM Plus could do. And so I hope this was a helpful overview. You see that we're using Korgi. We are also a project management platform that integrates all of Google Workspace, that you can use Gemini throughout and even query your boards to use them as their own guidance and advice. But the reason we're using Korgi today in the presentation is because you also can export them into a full Google Doc. So I am going to restore all of our cards to active. And with a click, we're going to take this presentation, turn it into a Google Doc, and then that is what I'm going to share with everyone, because you may have additional thoughts, questions, and of course, insights to share with the rest of the folks on this particular presentation and inside of our group. Thank you so much. I hope this was an incredibly useful session, that it got you thinking, and that you are going to go out and explore not just Gemini, but how you can use some of the principles and practices of project management to bring real success to your own projects, clients, and company.